Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. You've already done some great work by just showing up. It really does make a difference. There's a big message I'm going to be sharing throughout this session is that this concept of intentionality is not as far away as what you think. A little tiny action step like showing up today could get you closer to it. And that's something just to remember from this. So I'm really excited to share this with you. This is something I've been working on for a long time through my own personal experiences and then really putting it into philosophy for something that we can share to other people. Everything I do, I love to make in formulas and frameworks in a most simple possible way so that you can apply this to your life straight away. So I want to guarantee you that all of you will get a framework that you can follow in your life. And if you follow this and just apply the formula, you'll be living a life of intentionality before you know it. So let's begin. I want to share a little story just to start with some emotions. Imagine you're nearing the end of your life. Your body is old. You can feel the grip on the physical world relaxing and releasing. You know you're in your final days and you instinctively find yourself reflecting over the life you've created and the person you've become as a result of all your experiences. How do you imagine this moment to be? How do you want this moment to be? What does your soul desire for you at this point on the spectrum of your life in this body? Do you look back on a full life full of love, peace, freedom, and rich experiences that expanded your being in ways that now take your breath away at the beauty and awe of the life you've created? If you're not closing your eyes right now, I invite you to close your eyes for the rest of this story. Do you look back with pleasure and lightness, knowing you've lived fully, knowing you've exhausted your bucket list in a multitude of beautiful and unexpected ways? Do you feel at peace knowing you made the most of what you've got, that you learned what you needed to learn, that you left nothing untouched, and your legacy will outlast you in so many beautiful ways? Or will you look back with a laundry list of regrets, knowing that you left so much life on the table because you shared away from the opportunities that took you out of your comfort zone, because you didn't tap into the courage you needed to follow your heart, because you got stuck on the conventional path, not willing to take a step off the conveyor and choosing to live your life your way? Make no mistake, this moment will come. And when this moment arrives, you'll have one of these two experiences. Which will it be is entirely up to you. Because here's the beautiful reality of the extent of your power. You can have it all. You really can. You can live a life that's fully just squeezed out and explored. You've just stretched the limits of what it means to live, and you can enjoy an unlimited amount of incredible things. You can expand into the fullness of your being, unlocking unlimited personal power, freedom, expression, creativity, courage. You can be it all, have it all, and do it all. If you choose to live your life through the lens of intentionality, you can have it all, you can be it all, and do it all. So let me show you how. Do you have a passion that sometimes takes you away from your partner? For me, that passion is skiing. I love taking trips with friends, and because I play hard, I always return completely knackered. This happened just on the weekend. I went to Silverton in the south of Colorado, had an incredible 3 days. It's part of my intentionality practice where I spend 2 to 3 days solo each weekend, and I just completely shredded power and I was exhausted. And often when I'd arrive back exhausted, what would come in, I'd come in and I'd say, first thing is like, oh, I'm tired and I just want to go to bed. And what would that do? That wouldn't create a very great environment for my partner. They've been missing me. They wanted some engagement. They wanted to spend some time with me, but I was focused on sleep. So one day I tried something different. Instead of shuffling in the door and greeting my partner with bleary eyes and an exhausted vibe, I went, what is it that they really want? They want me to show up in my fullness, in the way that I would have been up on that mountain that day. So what I did before I got out of that car, I set the intention. How do you want to be remembered in that first few moments? And what energy do you need to bring to make them feel special and feel loved? So I rallied myself, I did some breathing, I walked in that door, and I basically just came in with great energy, embraced her, hugged her, gave her a big kiss, and she felt magical. I told her how much I missed her, how great it was to be together again. And for that moment, I forgot about my tiredness. All I did was put all my intention into her. The difference blew me away. What really happened was we felt more love. She felt appreciated. And then the funny thing is, she went, "You must be really tired. Why don't you go to bed?" And I didn't have to give much at all. What happened was that high energy encounter was enough to really satisfy her need to reconnect with me. She didn't mind that I needed to go to sleep or that I'd been away having lots of fun. We both got what we needed in that moment. And what was amazing was it took less than 10 minutes. It wasn't much time, but it was energy. You've probably seen this in your own life. You've probably seen how some people will come into your life and they'll suck your energy dry in a few seconds, while others can walk into a room and just uplift you. You feel absolutely incredible. Some people know how to make you feel as if you've been together for hours, even though it's only been moments past. I've heard Tom Cruise is an absolute master of this. A director once said that he has this energy and feel that this energy gets directed to you in a way that it's like a drug. It's wonderful. That's the power of energy. He would give you these little moments. It wasn't much time, it was energy. And apparently with Tom Cruise, pretty much everyone said the same thing about him. He's got that chemistry. So this is the first principle of intentionality. It's the idea that you can create disproportionate outcomes when you leverage your energy instead of time. So let me just say that again. You create disproportionate outcomes by leveraging your energy, not time. So what does this mean? So often we've become addicted to thinking that time is the most important thing. But we've seen in that example, Tom Cruise gave a tiny little bit of energy and he felt like you spent hours with him. That moment when I walked in the door from the ski trip, I didn't give much time, but I gave a lot of energy and it was all we really needed. Why is it that we're so focused on time? The idea of time, why we focus on this is because we see life as a linear place. We see it as we're born and we go through these steps. We grow a day older, a year older every year. The why we would love to fall back on time is because we can quantify it. We created these calendars, we created years, we created birthdays, all these things we can measure. Oh, I'm now a day older. I've spent 10 minutes with you. That's a really easy way. It's tangible and our human brain loves to track things that are really tangible. So we instinctively default there. But energy isn't like that. Energy can't be measured because it's more about how you feel as a result. It's how we feel in that area. And a result of this is that we've massively downplayed its role in our lives. We've got into our heads that the results we create must be connected to the amount of time you spend on something or with someone. How often we've thought that we've been, well, we've got to spend this time of time together in order to get the result. But then there's been plenty of times we've spent time with someone and it didn't really feel that great at all. It's why we really want to quantify love with the time spent together, or wrongly believe someone is better qualified for like a role in a job purely because they've spent more time in the game longer. Wouldn't you rather someone who comes in with energy? Because I can tell you, they're not more qualified just because they've spent time. So intentional people think differently. They know that results don't happen just because time has passed. Instead, their results depend on their ability to dial up their energy and be on it without getting distracted, sidetracked, or tired. You've probably seen this in your own life. There'll be times when maybe you've spent ages trying to write something, like do something creative, like writing, potentially doing a keynote presentation or an email, and you just seem to be just stuck. Nothing seems to be in flow. You can't work out the right words. It feels off. And even though you've been staring at that screen for perhaps 3 hours or more, the task is nowhere done. So time didn't really get the result that we wanted. Then there's those moments when you've just overflowing with energy. You just sit down and it's just the words start coming out of you. I know this happens to me sometimes because I write a lot of different blogs. You're in the zone. It feels like you can just write it off the cuff, just perfectly, just putting it down on paper with zero edits. And it really, when you looked at it, you went, oh my God, that took about 1/10 of the time than it normally did. This is because when it comes to your output, the real differentiator isn't time. It's all about your energy. One of my mentors, Dr. Joe Dispenza, says this: where your attention goes, your energy flows. Let me say that again. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. So where we pay attention to, what we focus in, our energy will go there. This is what the intentionality principle means for your life. If results aren't determined by time, you don't need more time to create the impact you want. Instead, you need more energy. If I came in here today and just started going through the motions and just reading some things off a keynote, going through the points, and spend an hour with you, you wouldn't have the same outcome as if I showed up and just went, intentionality, get on your path. This is something you need to be part of. You feel different. You feel great. It's why I evoked an emotion with you at the start by sharing a story that you could connect with, because we started channeling energy here. It's why I'm locking in and I'm looking at all the people on the list here. And I'm like, okay, I want to send you some energy so you feel it. So when you come away, you don't go, wow, that was an hour where it was draining. You came away and you're like, that was energy. I felt that and I want more of that. So the thing about energy, it doesn't matter how long you've got or how old you are or what your perceived time limiting restrictions are. If you elevate your energy, you'll create disproportionate outcomes compared to what other people can do in the same amount of time. Disproportionate means it's completely out of whack. It's not equal. For that little bit of energy you put in, you get 10 times more on the other end. Wouldn't we all want that? So what that really means is that where you are now and how long it's taken you to get there has zero bearings on what you're able to do next and how fast you can achieve it. This is why some people are able to take quantum leaps through that life. It's the idea that some people come out of nowhere and elevate beyond what everyone else has been able to achieve. Those overnight successes, they've focused their energy and they've gone, I'm getting a disproportionate outcome. This is incredibly empowering because so often, because of this linear concept that we have, we look back at our past and we go, well, it took me this amount of time to get here. So I'm going to have to spend this amount of time in the future to get there. And that seems really long and really hard. But when you realize it's all about energy, you might look back in your life and realize, wow, I didn't really actually put much energy into that. I put a lot of time, but I didn't put all my energy into that. And when you do, whew, what's possible? So much is there. So this is how you can collapse your time to create a disproportionate uplift, potentially in your sales numbers or a transformation in your relationship in a timescale that doesn't seem possible. It's how your profile can suddenly explode or your wealth takes a huge upward curve. It's that idea that you put all these little things into place and you're working, and then suddenly they all come together and they jump. They take a quantum leap. That's the idea of the quantum leap. Energy's connecting, and before they know it, you're a new person. You've had that transformation. Energy is a much more powerful lever to pull than time. And it's why intentional people invest in practices that elevate their personal energy. And they start by priming their energy in the morning. So first thing you do in the morning, if you get there, and please don't tell me this, but if you check your phone and jump into your email or social, what do you think's potentially happening? You're giving time to something which is going to take away your energy. Energy is depleted. It drains you. you're on someone else's agenda, not on your own. So instead, what I want you to do, and I'm going to be sharing a bunch of practical steps for each of these principles today, and this is my first one. I want you to create a morning routine that makes you feel powerful. I want you to feel aligned. I want you to feel peaceful. I want you to feel purposeful. And I want you to feel just pumped up to go out there and feel great so you can focus the energy on the things that you want. You could try journaling. You could read something uplifting. You could exercise, or you could meditate, or you could do all of them, which I love to do. And as the Zen proverb goes, if you don't have time to meditate for an hour every day, you should meditate for 2 hours. Why is that? Because when you meditate, you are creating more energy. Yes, you have got now less time in the day to do what you want, but the time that you have for the rest of the day, you're putting more energy in and you get disproportionate outcomes. So in fact, you'll create, sounds weird, but you'll create more time for yourself by doing more time in meditation or these other activities, because you'll make better decisions, you'll have more energy, and then you'll have more capacity for other things. So a lot of people I coach tell me that they don't have time for any of this stuff. I work with a lot of high-performing entrepreneurs, but there's always something else that they want. They want to be a better person. They want to have better relationships, but there's always an excuse about work or kids or something like that. And they're just like, I don't have time to do this. And I just tell them to think of themselves like a Tesla. So it doesn't matter how incredible that Tesla car is. If the battery goes dead, it's completely useless. You won't be able to get that incredible power thrust that it does. It'll just be dead. So we need to make sure that we apply the same principle to us. We need to make sure that our battery is charged up, that it's ready to go, so we can get the most performance out of ourselves. And these intentionality practices like the morning routine is super, super important. So this same principle is also applicable in the business world. Where do we think one of the greatest places that we spend in business is? Anyone guess? Where do we spend so much time in business? And where does it generally suck a lot of our energy? Please feel free to dive into the chat. Lots of engagement would be awesome today. Yes, meetings. Beautiful. Meetings are that place. Meetings, they just suck energy out of us so often, but it's also one of the best places to leverage energy over time, especially if your company defaults to that 1 hour time span. I've often thought about that. If everyone just changed their calendars to 15-minute blocks, would most of our meetings go to 15 minutes? I dare say they would. So our human condition is we love to go to default places. So because Google Calendar does an hour allocation of meeting, every meeting seems to be an hour. So I love to tell you that I love to get you to, and I do this with many companies, I go in there and I analyze their meetings and I just go, where is this draining on your profit, your people, and your time? Because they generally are. Most meetings are pretty ineffective. People are so focused on the time spent there that they don't realize that it's the energy that really matters. So if you suddenly start thinking about that concept that we get disproportionate outcomes by leveraging energy instead of time, what you start realizing is we need to make sure that everyone in our meeting is trained to bring their energy instead of time. And perhaps your meetings could be so much quicker, more productive, and more effective. So you could do this, and this is something I recommend, and you could introduce in meetings from now on. Focus on setting an intention for every meeting. Why are you calling this meeting? And if you don't know why you're in this meeting, ask, what is the intention? What's happening there? Is there specific things that you need to get out of this time? Next, define what would a successful outcome be for this meeting? What would it be? What needs to occur for this to be successful? It helps framing our energy into where we want to go. And then finally, what is the role that I need to play or anyone else play that role is to actually get the right outcome. And that role determines what type of energy you need to do. So for example, I play a number of different roles. I'm a boss, I'm a coach, I'm a friend, I'm a facilitator, and I need to know which one am I in. Do you want feedback? Do you want coaching? Do you want me just to listen? Whatever it is, because then I can work out this is the energy I wanted to bring. Because if someone just wants to be heard and I bring in coaching advice mode energy, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to suddenly not feel heard. They're going to potentially get defensive and their energy gets sucked. So this is why that role is so important. When you infuse meetings with intentionality, you won't have people aimlessly sitting there willing the meeting to be over. Instead, you'll create an environment inside which your team and company can truly thrive. This is the power of intentionality. It guides you to get back to that specific thing that you want. Instead of leaving this to chance, you get to craft a life on your terms. You get to define the rules. And a big piece of stepping into this possibility is getting clear on what you really want and how that might differ significantly from what you think you want. For example, have you ever had a time when you were so excited about doing or achieving something because you thought it would give you everything you wanted, but straight after you felt completely miserable? Just let me know if you ever had that moment. Perhaps you're feeling it right now. You might have been, I just achieved this goal and I feel pretty sad, feel pretty miserable. I'm getting a few nods. Brilliant. So this is exactly how I felt at the point when I'd actually achieved my dreams, my life vision. I've been practicing intentionality for a very long time. I had a vision board. I called it Intentional Path. I knew what it is that I wanted to go to. And I discovered that I was pretty damn miserable. What's weird, I was married to a woman I loved. I was in a beautiful home in Beaver Creek. I'd moved to America. I could ski whenever I wanted. I was skiing 100 days a year. I had multi-millions of dollars because I worked out how to create wealth for myself and others. I'd been an undercover angel in a National Geographic documentary. I'd won multiple awards. I was in the media. I had a great group of friends. It seemed like my life was amazing. And what's interesting, there was really nothing left external for me to chase, even though there was always more, but I didn't really feel it. I'd achieved everything I wanted at that place. But at that moment, I didn't feel the way I'd imagined I'd feel. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel accepted. I didn't feel joyful. None of any of these external outcomes gave me the feelings that I wanted. Instead, they actually made me feel worse because I realized that regardless of how much I did, I didn't get closer to how I felt. I wanted feelings like freedom. I wanted feelings of love, feelings of acceptance, trust. None of this was there. And what's really weird is that none of this made sense to me. It made zero sense because I'd done everything right. I'd been in intentional life. I'd achieved the things I was meant to do. I was ahead of everyone else. And what was frustrating is this conditioned state told me to chase all of these things. The conditioned state that had promised me that there was gold at the end of the rainbow. I will be happy when. I'll feel loved when I do this. All of these big things would be there. But the problem was there was still a gaping hole inside. And because of that, my life began to fall apart. That's generally what happens when you get to a point where you can't understand why you still not feeling good, even though everything on the external is feeling bad. So in that moment, a few things started happening. I had some unfortunate business experiences. I had my wife leave me. I lost interest in my business and I started to self-sabotage and lose money. What's even more surprising is that this story is not uncommon. I've heard it so many times, but for some reason we need to hear it more often because we keep doing it. I've met so many super successful people who've had it all. I've met billionaires who feel more lonely and more sad than they were when they had no money. So what happened to me is when my life got torn up in front of me, I finally found the missing piece, this key of intentionality. We experience fulfillment, not just success, when we focus on the desired feelings, not just the outcomes. Let me say that again. We experience fulfillment, not just success, when we focus on the desired outcomes, desired feelings, not just the outcomes. This is the second principle of intentionality, and it's going to completely transform your world. Life will suddenly become easier because all those things that you thought you had to do, maybe you don't need to do them anymore. This is the really funny thing about this. At the core of your desire to live an incredible life is an awareness of how you want to feel. As humans, we crave emotions such as love, peace, success, freedom, and happiness and joy. These core positive emotions. We know these emotions and we feel good when we have these emotions. The problem is that we've got so focused on external objectives, materialistic possessions, that we think that we'll get these feelings by going after these. We get so focused on the outcomes, not rather than the feelings. This is why we chase the $1 million businesses, the fast car, the dream home, the perfect relationship, because we think that these outcomes will make us feel a certain way. But here's the fallacy, the kicker in this, is you don't actually want the thing, you want the feeling attached to the thing. And unfortunately, a lot of us are really bad at working out what the feeling will be attached to. We believe that this outcome will give us this feeling, but often it doesn't, because we often don't even know what we truly want. And we can spend a lot of time, a lot of energy going down a path which didn't bring us what we really wanted. That's exactly what I experienced. I got to the end and I was like, I'm not actually feeling what I really wanted to feel. So there's a much quicker way to get there than going on this outcome focused. It doesn't really work. What it does is it puts a fast forward on our life, because everything you need to make you feel the way you want is in the future. I saw this so many times in the army. We would create these stories that we want this dream posting which someone had told us is so important, it would make you feel so proud. And I would hear people, they would be like, well, I just need to spend 2 years in this really yucky location. I need to spend 2 years going overseas and risking my life. I need to spend another 2 years doing this job that I really don't like. But then it's going to be all worth it because I'm going to have this 1 year. And I just went, you just wrote off 6 years of your life. Did you realize you just did that in 20 seconds? You wrote off 6 years in your life. That's the danger about this. So we need to focus on the feelings. So what are the feelings now that could give you the result that you want? And the power of this is it gives you some flexibilities. This is why I'm a big driver of intentions over goals, because you can have a greater spectrum of a way to get your feelings with an intention rather than a goal. Let me share a personal story. So in 2019, I was very privileged to become the president of the Colorado chapter of Entrepreneurs Organization. For those of you who don't know it, it's the most incredible peer group of entrepreneurs in the world. It's great. It's very inspiring. Just the caliber of people are amazing. And to lead this group of entrepreneurs, 150 entrepreneurs who are all amazing in their own right, it was a big responsibility. So I took it very, very seriously. I spent a bunch of time planning for it. I actually spent a whole year planning before I got there to work out how I wanted to have an incredible year as president. And what I did was define all these different things, all these outcomes, all these goals. I was super excited about all this innovative stuff we're going to do. The second half of my presidency was really, especially the last 3 months, was really like I had some surprises for everyone, some incredible experiences, some balls, retreats, all these different things. And I was on track. We were going super, super well. And then the global pandemic happened. And overnight, the organization changed. Suddenly we couldn't do in-person events. I had big parts of my chapter going like completely in stress about their business, fearful that they were going to lose their business. Everything changed. And for a moment there, I went into a bit of shock. I actually went into a bit of paralysis Because I was suddenly thinking that overnight, my chances of being like this incredible president, achieving all these outcomes, pretty much went to zero. The outcomes that I wanted were gone. And I started feeling really sorry for myself. It was not my most proudest moment, but it's a small time period. But what I did was I was struggling with my ego. My ego started coming up and it was like, you're going to be a failure. Everyone's going to remember you as the worst EO president ever. You've done so bad. But thankfully, because I'm someone who practices intentionality regularly, I had a few tools in my toolkit. And I remembered, I believe I prepared for this. I went back to my intention document that I created at the start of my presidency and I reread my words. And the key intention, I wrote one intention for the year. I had all these different outcomes, the vision for how I wanted the year, but there was one intention. And it said, I want to be proud of my leadership. This changed my life. I went from a disempowered, feeling sorry for myself, thinking that I was a failure and there was nothing possible, to suddenly realize I could change this. Because I could still be proud of my leadership. With this core intention, I realized that there was an opportunity. I was still president. And I just started going, what would a president who went through this situation, what would they do to be proud of their leadership? And all of a sudden, I went into flow. I stopped thinking, decisions just started happening. It was very clear I needed to connect my people. I needed to make clarity about how we would navigate this. I needed to reassure that we would not leave anyone behind, regardless of what was happening with your financial situation. And because of that, other presidents jumped on board and we were able to up level. We did such an incredible job. At the end of my presidency, even though I didn't achieve hardly any of the outcomes, I achieved my intention. I felt more proud of my leadership than I could ever imagined. And that is the power of having a clarity around how you wanted to feel. I wanted to feel proud. And because I did that, regardless of what happened on the external, I knew that there was some things to do. So it's really important. This is some practical steps. The best way to do this is to get really clear on your values, both in business and in life. When you know what's important to you, you can start creating the environment to bring that alive for you. It makes decisions make it very, very easy. You look at it and you go, does it align with my values or not? That's really all you need to do. So this really, about this understanding of amplifying the feelings that you desire, is a practice that you'll unlock as we move more into the third principle of intentionality. And this is something that I discovered in a trampoline park of all times. I'll never forget the experience. I loved trampolines as a kid. As a kid, we'd have one of those standing up ones, which was not staked into the ground. It had metal rings across it. You could jump and then you could fall through between the springs. I'd smash my head on that so many times. If I jumped too far on the edge, it would flip over. So there was always an edge of like, oh my God, this could really hurt. Like I was really worried all the time. So I couldn't push the full limit. I'd always wanted to try a double somersault, but I just couldn't have the confidence to do it. Everything changed when I went into a trampoline park one time. You've probably been to one of these places where it had cushions everywhere. They had padding on the walls. And basically you realized you're fully protected. You don't really need to have much fear here. It was completely freeing because what it did was these protective boundaries gave me the freedom to really go hard, to take risks, and it felt incredible. And what I realized was that experience on the trampoline is a metaphor for life. How many times have you held yourself back from something because you didn't want to get hurt? How many times have you stopped yourself for the fear that it might go wrong? How often have you slipped off path because you didn't really know where to get back in line to? This is why we need to focus on this third principle of intentionality, which is why intentional people eliminate friction by creating freedom through self-made boundaries. The third principle of intentionality. Intentional people eliminate friction by creating freedom through self-made boundaries. Why is this important? It's because freedom is what your soul craves. It's because freedom of expression and desire to push as far as we can and how we grow and evolve as an individuals and as a collective. You see this in business all the time. Think of the entrepreneur or the boss that you've had who needs to micromanage everything. What happens to you? You feel suffocated. You feel you're creative. You feel your creative juices just dry up. You feel criticized. You feel questioned. You feel a lot of friction. That's what you really feel. So compare this to the leader who just gives you empowerment, who just tells you, this is your area. You can do this as long as you stay in these boundaries. You can do whatever you want. You can spend this amount of money without coming and asking me. What happens then? Suddenly you have freedom. You can just go for it. You've got a self-made boundary and you can go for it. And it just gives you such a great feeling. You don't have that friction of thinking I need to go every day. And friction, what is friction? It slows you down. So suddenly everything is going quicker and you're able to just achieve and create so much more powerful. I used to be an army officer in a past life. And it was incredible. Like, we often think the army is the most controlled hierarchy place there is. And in some regards, there was a lot of that. But at the root of it, when you're out in the field and you're in a military decision, everything can go wrong. You can be split up, you can be separated, you can have no radio communication, and you're out there in enemy zones. So what was key things we always got in our orders was we always knew our commander's intent. High up, like a couple up, and then also our director commander's intent. So we knew the big picture. And we also knew our mission. And why this was important was because if we knew the intent, we were empowered to make decisions in the moment without having to worry for authority. Because in a military situation, you don't have time to make decisions a lot of the time. So this was incredible. This could mean the difference between life or death. So for example, if we knew that the commander's intent was to take all high ground, if we were separated and it was just a few people and we saw an opportunity to take high ground, we could do that without making any call into our commander or worrying. And that could be the difference in winning the battle or not. So you've probably seen this with parents who have been at a theme park and they've just given some clear directions to the child. Be at this place at this time. If you get lost, go to this place. You can spend this amount of money and do these things. Suddenly the child, and just let them go, they can feel so much freedom. The friction of going, checking in all the time is gone. So this is something you can do. It's really powerful. When people know where they stand, they can keep moving forward. And we all want to keep moving forward. So give people that luxury. So this can really apply to your business as well. When you empower your team with boundaries, you cultivate trust, you foster creativity, you spark innovation, which in turn drives profits and greater outputs, greater successes, and a great culture as well. One of the most effective ways to create boundaries, though, is through your daily habits and rituals. So often when people hear habits and rituals, they get a little bit worried because they start thinking that it's going to be about being rigid. This is not being about rigid. There's a level of discipline, but intentional people are disciplined, but they're not rigid. So it's important. You create boundaries, you be disciplined, but you've got to be flexible with them and adaptive to what's happening in your life. For example, intentional people, like I said, have a morning routine to prime their energy, to get focused and make sure that they're on their path, not on someone else's path. So they're less likely to just get lost in the day. Another thing, what intentional people do, they protect their finances and feel freedom with their money by just setting a personal spending budget. They're positive constraints. They put this boundary in place so they know that if they spend over, it will run out, but everything else is happening in their life. So that means they can go through the week feeling guilt-free and spending on whatever they want because they know that they've put boundaries in place to look after them. Intentional people protect their well-being with an exercise ritual, like committing maybe to do 30 minutes every morning, or perhaps practicing intermittent fasting. That's an example of a ritual. It makes it very easy. You just stay in some boundaries and then it's a lot easier to follow. It's why it's gone so successful recently. And in business, intentional people might have a ritual of setting their top 3 priorities for their day. At the end of each day, they do it for tomorrow, and they make sure that they work on their top one straight away until all those priority tasks have been checked off. They keep ticking off because it gives them that structure to make sure they're working on the important ones. So with the help of these boundaries, you can prevent the bottom falling out of your life. You don't have to get to that disaster point to wake up, because you get this place where the boundary catches you and in a really great place. So it's really important that you do this. It gives you this freedom to go harder towards your risks and desires. But, and yes, there is a but, by themselves, self-made boundaries aren't enough to keep your mindset in check. There's always the risk that your thinking will take you off path, because this thing here is one of the most powerful assets, but it's also one of the most dangerous weapons. The good news is that there's another intentionality principle that will keep you stand strong in the truth of who you are. And while this is one of the hardest principles to master, it's also the one that I believe offers the biggest breakthrough. One of the most interesting things about my story, about my life, is that I've been actually intentional from a very young age. For example, as a kid, I was very conscious about the friends that I'd spend more time with. I had great friends, but there'd be certain ones where I'd be like, I'd love to be able to stay at your place, because when I spent time in their homes, I felt a little bit of what it was like to feel in a beautiful, safe family. And that's what I was really missing in my childhood. So intentionality has always been there. The problem was, even though I'd been living with intentionality, there was a default response of fear. There was a fear driving a lot of my intentionality actions. And this is what I discovered when I had my pretty much my rock bottom moment in my life. I had this aha moment that even though I was being intentional, it was being driven from fear. And unfortunately, that's the way that most of us do things. It's not our fault though. Our childhood conditioning, where we all have some form of trauma, and it stops us from being in a place of love a lot of the time. And there's a place of lack, there's a place of scarcity, and we're looking for what we didn't get. So we're always seeking outside of there. And our instinct is a fearful response. And in a weird way, it's quite healthy. Like, fear protects us when we think about it. This is where it came from in our genetic makeup. Fear is our inbuilt warning system that's designed to alert you to perceived dangers, so you're in the best possible situation to survive. That idea that if I'm in trouble, fear puts me in, cortisol gets released, and I'm in action state. The problem is, though, that the fear response wasn't built with this 21st century living in mind. Instead, it was designed for our ancient ancestors who needed to fight off an attack from a saber-toothed tiger. It wasn't designed for our modern day life. The problem is that this same fight or flight response shows up in our modern day life when you're stuck in traffic jam and you're late for an important meeting, when you're nervous about checking your emails, when you lose money, when your business idea fails, when your partner walks out on you. These fear responses come up and we think it's life or death. But the problem is, you can't be an effective human if you fight back or run away from these types of problems. These problems are happening for us, not to us. We need to lean in this moment. And what's unfortunate, because fear, that response shoots cortisol up through us, it puts on a place of scarcity, lack, limited thinking. And what happens in any emotional intelligence that you would have in a normal situation goes out through the door, and we go into a bit of a protective, reactionary mindset, which often gives us results of being angry, irritated, frustrated, which doesn't give us any help in those situations. So what we need to do is we need to start thinking about what happens in these moments. So as cortisol rises, you waste energy worrying about what might happen instead of being present with what's actually real in this moment. Fear feeds the wolf inside of you and makes you believe you're unworthy, unlovable, or not enough, which in turn undermines your self-confidence and steals your love. It's how fear keeps you small, because you won't speak up, take action, protect boundaries, which in turn negatively impacts your relationship with yourself and other people. In other words, fear keeps you from experiencing the deeper levels of love, joy, freedom, fulfillment, deeper connection, and success that exists on this other side. So when my wife left me, the fear response was overwhelming. But as much as I knew this would hurt so much, I knew from being intentional and reading a lot of great texts that I'd never get another opportunity like this in my life. Although I'd been loving and intentional in our marriage, I knew that somehow I'd also played a role in this breakdown. And something told me that I was at a crossroads moment. It would have been so easily in that moment to just go to my fear response and go to my trauma of abandonment. I felt abandoned as a child, and then I'd been abandoned in my marriage, and it would have been very easy to go, I'm going to put up a shell around my heart. I'm going to protect myself forever. I'm going to not believe in love. I'm going to question if how women can, if you can trust women. I'm going to basically do all these different things that would have led me on one path, but I wouldn't have had to deal with the pain. And I looked at that path and I was like, okay, where does this path lead me? It leads me to not being in a relationship, never being a dad, probably doing a lot of shitty things to people, probably partying a lot, having some fun, but not really enjoying it. So I was like, I'm not sure about that path. And then I looked at this other path and I saw a path that had a lot of challenges, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering in the short term. But I saw on the other side, potentially I could learn to love myself. I could be proud of myself. I might fall in love again. I could be a dad. All these different things were on this path. And at that moment, I looked at the two different paths and it became pretty clear which path I needed to take. I needed to take the one which would have more short-term pain, but a lot longer gain. So for 3 months, I sat in this giant mansion in Beaver Creek, the place which I thought was going to be my dream place. And I sat there and I didn't do anything. I didn't distract myself. I didn't go on basically a path, that other path I was talking about. I sat there because I knew that I wanted to be a better person. I wanted to believe there was a chance that I could learn to love myself and have all these things that I'd imagined for my life. So I got off social media. I just sat there and I did the work. That's the key thing. I did the work. Now, what's funny is I thought this path was going to happen. It was going to take so long for me to get there. And in hindsight, yes, it was 3 months, but 3 months isn't that long when you think about it. In that moment, it felt very, very long. It was really, really hard. It was super hard. And even at the point where there was days where I questioned, how am I going to do this? I basically, through intentionality, I wrote down 16 things, that little daily rituals that I could do, very simple things that would make me feel a little bit better. For example, like just going and sitting in the sun and getting a little serotonin boost, or perhaps reading a nice book, or doing something kind for someone, or working out. And I told myself if I did 5, you could live another day. It would be okay. And then from experience, if I did 10, by the end of the day, I actually felt pretty good. And that's how I got to the other side. This self-made boundary really helped me. I just went, I'm just got to tick through this. I'm not going to think about tomorrow. Just got to get through today. And I just kept ticking these things off. And I started building a bit of momentum. I honestly looked at what in my life, what I'd been overlooking, what had contributed to this moment. And I started doing the work. I thought about things. Well, I hadn't spoken to my father in 18 years. Perhaps maybe that had contributed to where I was at. I had some resentment against my mum. I had some things about my body. There was a bunch of different things. And what I realized, the more I sat with myself, the more I read about the healing power of love, the more I began to see a different path. The path where I chose love over fear. And this is the 4th principle of intentionality. Intentional people know that they experience peace and joy when they learn to choose love over fear. Since then, in any moment, I just go truth or illusion, love, fear. And whenever I choose the love thing, I always end up feeling better. It's not always the easy path, but it's the powerful path. It creates so many things, so much opportunity in your life. Because really underneath us, we're all love. That is our true nature. It's the truth of who we are. So I want to share some tangible ways to bring out this principle, because sometimes people go, oh, love, fear, love has got such a connotation in life. How do I connect with that? So the first, how about you just assume the best in people? That might open up a few things. This is really great for relationships, especially powerful for overcoming jealousy. Take my girlfriend. She's gorgeous. She hangs out with lots of guy friends. And at the start of my relationship, I had this little moment where tiny little fear crept up. And it's that story, which I'm sure all of you have experienced, with some form of jealousy. And you go, what would happen spending time with other guys? Do I want that? And in that moment, I saw one path and I could go that path. It would be the fearful path. And what would happen? I'd feel stressed out. I'd always be worrying. I'd be judging. And then I just went, what would be the loving thing to do? And the loving thing was just to go, don't even think about it, fully trust. If it happens, deal with it. But in that moment, just trust. And because of that, a whole lot of other things happen. I felt peace and joy because I've never wasted a single moment worrying about it. I also have had a better relationship. I've also met a lot of cool guy friends that I might have missed out on because I might have been judging them, and I've actually connected with them. So it's incredibly powerful to choose love over fear. It's created so much freedom for me. You can also do this in business. Remember, when you're behind or something, or you're not where you're at, you could choose love over fear. Love the moment rather than being fearful that you're not where you want to be. When fear is replaced by love, you'll be more creative, more innovative, more edgy, and I guarantee it will make all the difference. And there's another practice you can do, which will intensify your creativity too. And I'm going to share that story with you now. As part of my journey into spirituality, I trained in breath work. I loved integrating this modality into my work because it just opened up people. Breath is one of the quickest ways to be intentional. It drops you into the moment. It also makes you choose love over fear when something shows up, and even when you're not spiritual. So I remember when I was taking this group of type A entrepreneurs through a retreat, definitely wouldn't class themselves as spiritual, but something will happen when I open them up to breath in our journey together. They experienced things that they'd never felt before: emotions, divine signs, feelings of being limitless. They knew that they were a good person. They were lovable. They were worthy. They were enough. They received communication from somewhere else too. That's the other message they kept saying. It was almost like someone else was speaking to me. Through breath work, these entrepreneurs had a moment where they realized they're not their feelings, their stories, their ego, their identity. Instead, they tapped into this instinctive knowing that there's something else beneath the surface, a powerful, soulful, spiritual being. And that being is a lot more capable than anything else you could have imagined. It's like Wayne Dwyer said, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. The problem is that most of us think that we're doing it the other way around. As a human, we are limited. As a soul, with the capacity to do so much more because we have the life force of the universe with us. It's like Marianne Williamson said, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are more powerful beyond measure. There's so much more to us than our limited human mind can comprehend. The reason why breath work opens up a doorway to our true nature is because breathing pulls you fully into the now. And the magic can only happen in the now, because the past and the future are controlled by the ego, which is driven by fear. So in comparison, in the now, you're guided by your soul, which is driven by love. And this is why intentional people connect to their true nature by practicing the power of presence, which is the fifth intentionality principle. Connect to your true nature by practicing the power of presence. In the now, you realize how complicated the ego tries to make your life. We love to make our life complicated. We're chasing all these external successes. We're focused on these certain outcomes. We make life really hard because we can't control all the variables, because there's so much of life that's out of our hands. But when you drop into the power of now through presence, you remember who you really are. Even if you're in a really painful situation, you're neck deep into a situation, you know that you're more than that. You're here. There's a wisdom. There's something more powerful. Your true nature. this body, this intellect, this loving thing. Suddenly, some of those issues drop away. You find this joy and love and happiness in the simplest things. But that's not the only benefit of being present. When you're truly present, you also have the greatest ideas. This is how some of the greatest entrepreneurs or artists have created so much, because they've dropped into the present. Have you ever taken a walk or you've had a shower when you're just suddenly overwhelmed with a brilliant insight? I've had it too. It's because you've stopped doing. You've stopped trying to force something. You've created a gap and you've able to allow life to communicate through you. This is the story behind that eureka moment. Remember that eureka moment we got taught in science? Archimedes was tasked on how to determine whether this gold crown was actually gold. And one time he was sitting in a bathtub and he noticed all the water come out and he went, "Eureka! I have the answer." He had this moment shot of insight. He just completely went calm and he realized that a problem was solved straight away by the displacement of that water. It happened in a second. He had this beautiful insight and he was told something which could have taken days, and it was easy. It was effortless for him. Humans love to make life hard. This is why companies such as Google, Yahoo, big companies, they do put meditation rooms and spiritual practices, because they're starting to realize this idea of spirituality not being tangible is now super powerful. There's science backing it up, and it's all about getting into the present so we can connect to your true nature. So the best way to do that is just take a breath. Take a breath now. And suddenly I'm back in my body and I'm feeling really, really connected again. We have that amazing ability. So Sydney, I'd just love you to share the last few slides, please, before I finish up. So I just want you to remember about intentionality. There's an act, a practice. If we live by these principles, we start realizing that we choose to live life on our rules, not on someone else's rules. It becomes incredibly powerful. We know that we have the energy to do this. We don't need to worry or obsess about time. We focus on energy. This is what intentional people do. They know that they can drop the need to achieve certain things because they've mastered the shortcut for feeling good. They know they can follow the heart because they have self-made boundaries to keep them safe. They know they'll always take the next best step because they choose love over fear. And they never forget who they really are because they know how to connect with their true nature through the doorway of presence. These 5 principles of intentionality are here to help you feel the way you want to feel as you move through life. They're here to help you find your path, get on your path, and stay on your path. And I emphasize your path, because there's a path that's perfect for you, a path that holds everything you want and everything your true nature came here to experience. Your path is perfect for you. And while from the outside, other people's paths might look better, they're not. A month before my life blew up, everyone was looking at my path and going, "Oh my God, I'd love to be on your path. It looks incredible." From the outside in, it looked pretty incredible. But what would these same people have said if they saw that in a month's time, everything that was about to occur in my life was there? Would they still choose to want to be on that path? Probably not. That's the danger of comparing other people's paths. So your path holds the most fulfillment. And here at Intentionality, we want to guide you on how to do that. And I'm just going to share that now. So through intentionality, you can find a philosophy for living that actually works for you. You can implement the 5 universal laws in your own life. You can stop searching for answers and start walking your path. Experience more love, more direction, well-being, and prosperity. And you can reconnect with your true nature so you can experience wholeness and more. And plus, I'm going to work with all of you personally. So if you want us to guide you onto your path so you can reconnect with your true nature and create more love, direction, well-being, and prosperity in your life, then take the first step and jump on a call with us. You can book in a call to speak with my team through this link, and we'll be sending this to you afterwards. When we work together, we'll personally empower you to achieve disproportionate outcomes in your life. You'll experience fulfillment now without the need to chase things. You'll eliminate friction from your life so you can go harder. You'll program yourself to choose love over fear as your default, and you connect to your true nature so you can find your path, get on your path, and stay on your path. And limited spots are available because this is important work. This is the work which will radically transform your life. So remember, book in your call now. I would love to invite some questions. I know we've just finished the time, but I'm going to stay on for anyone who would love to ask any questions. And for anyone who wants to go, just please go. But I find questions are super, super powerful. It's a way to learn. This is why I love group learning so much. But for everyone else who does need to go, it was a pleasure. Thanks for showing up. And remember, choose to be intentional. All right, so I've got a couple of different questions. How can I be intentional even when I'm stressed? So I spoke about this idea. What's stress coming from? It's the ego telling a story that something potentially might happen in the future. A lot of stress, like Mark Twain has this comment, I've worried about a lot of things in my life that most of them never actually came to fruition. That's what stress is really about. It's creating a situation in the future which we're worried about and concerned about. So what we need to do is we need to drop into the moment, breathing, meditating, walking in the sun, so we can reconnect with our true nature. When we're with our true nature, suddenly those issues drop away and we feel so much more powerful. It pulls us back into line, and then we can start making the decisions that we're probably avoiding. Another question is, how do I be intentional when I'm out of flow? So one is getting back into those self-made boundaries. So sometimes I slip. Like, I'm generally pretty healthy. I work out a lot. I eat pretty well. But every so often I realize I've slipped a little bit. So what I do is I get back to those self-made boundaries. It might be intermittent fasting. It might be waking up at a certain time. It might be dedicating a period of time to work out each day. By doing that, I eliminate that friction. I create more freedom, which is really that flow state. So those self-made boundaries are incredibly powerful. Any other questions? I'm just looking through. My favorite intentionality practice is by far the breath. What I love about it is it can be one breath and I'm back in an intentional state, 3 breaths, I'm even better. And then I can also get into altered states of consciousness through my breath. So that's by far my favorite intentionality practice. But you know what else? I have one other. It's when I wake up in the morning, I determine, how do I want to feel at the end of the day? It might want to be, I want to feel loving. I want to feel proud. And by doing that one little moment, it anchors me for the day. And as situations arise, I'm able to make decisions in the moment which lead me towards that place rather than away from it. So generally by the end of the day, I feel so much better than I would have when I'd set that intention. So if there's one practice to do, that would be a very great practice to do. Well, I'm mindful of time. Thank you all for showing up. You're incredible. You're not that far away from a life of intentionality. You apply one practice that I shared with you today, and you can do this. I just did have a question. How do I set that intention for the day? I generally look at what's happening in my life, and I'm there and I'm like, I ask my body, I just check in and go, what do I need more of right now? And it might be like love. I want to feel proud. I want to feel energized or decisive. And I just go, right, that's it. I drop into my true nature, and some wisdom comes through me, and that's what I go for. And then I just seek that out at the end of the day. And what it does is, at the end of the day, I rate my day against that. And I could have had a really rough day, but if I wanted to be proud, and I was proud because I made really good decisions, then I can give myself a 10. Incredibly powerful. Thank you, everyone. Remember, be intentional, live in the now, and choose to live a life with intentionality.